Hello and welcome to the Integrity Sports Podcast. Each week we are powered by our friends at Harper's Tree and Stump Removal. If you have any tree trimming, tree removal, or stump removal needs, our friends at Harper's Tree and Stump Removal have you covered. In addition to these services, they can also haul rock and sand. They can do driveway work and can now do horizontal grindings of large wood debris piles. Give Keith a call at 229-314-2048 or at 229-938-2012. Harper's Tree and Stump Removal is the proud premier sponsor of the Integrity
Welcome
Sports
to
Podcast.
the Integrity Sports Podcast, covering local sports in the Southwest Georgia area, creating content that is factual, positive, and informative, promoting efforts by athletes, coaches, and sports administrators. Now, here's your host, Tim Estes.
Hello, and thank you for making the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine. We have a special edition, a Thanksgiving edition for you today. Normally, this time of year on Thanksgiving Day, we are up in Boonville, Mississippi at my parents' house, and we celebrate what we have called for years Thanksmas. We normally do Thanksgiving on the Friday after Thanksgiving Day, and then on Saturday we'll open. We weren't able to make the trip this year, and so I thought it'd be kind of neat to have my dad and my brothers join me. Of course, we are missing my brother John, who lives here in Sumter County, and my sister Leanne, who lives there in Boonville. But these that we have on screen all had something to do with sports here in Southwest Georgia, so I thought it'd be kind of neat to have this episode. But want to welcome in my dad, Jim Estes, my brother, Steve, and my brother, Jake. Glad to have all of you with me today.
Glad to be here.
Good to be.
I guess nobody's speaking. All right, we're going to get started. And here's what we're going to kind of do today, guys. We're going to talk a little bit about growing up in Southwest Georgia and kind of your memories of when we played ball. And Dad, you can talk some about what you went through as the parent. And toward the end, I want to get into more of the college football, because that's something that we have always gotten into on Saturday after we opened Christmas presents, and several of us have different teams. So it's going to be a hodgepodge today, but I think it'll be something folks will enjoy. And Dad, we'll start with you. You were able to watch all three of us compete in high school sports at America's High School from, I guess, the mid-1980s through the early 1990s while we were all at America's High. Tell me some of your favorite memories from those days when you were in America's.
Well, thank you, Tim. I know Janita and I were blessed to be able to watch our children play sports, and we love the sports program at America's High School. I know, Tim, when I think about you, I think about baseball and what a great catcher you were. I remember that marathon game. I believe it was against Dodge County. I think we played 17 innings. Ron Vitches was pitching and for the entire game.
Yeah. And
you caught the entire game. It was a great game, except we lost 2-1, I believe. But just
that's right.
Having the stamina to hang in there for 17 innings. I also like watching you play basketball. Janita and I were talking about that today, and we remember the game where you made 10 free throws in a row. And, you know,
Macon County.
When you didn't miss a one. And
yeah.
I remember you playing at I believe we were playing Macon County, and Janita told me you made 20 points. I wish they had 3-pointers back then, because most of your shots would have been well beyond the 3-point line. When I think about Steve and Jay, I think about, well, football. You know, how many parents can have one child as a quarterback and another child as the center, and both of them first team?
Yeah.
I mean, that was fantastic. And I think Steve and Jay got to play in Coach Shell's 200th game, so I know that was a milestone there for America's High. I believe Janita and I were pretty active in the booster program there. I was president of the booster club there for a year. So I know I was working with Procter and Gamble, and some of my coworkers lived in Perry, and I can remember inviting them all over to a game between America's High and Crisp County. And I remember Steve throwing the winning touchdown pass in that game. You know, a parent did this, something like that just sort of stands out to you. When I think about football, there was a game in Jackson, Georgia. And I think Steve and Jay were both in that game. Jay was in that game up against a D1 prospect. And I remember Jay feeling really good about really laying him out one time. I really liked the end of that game too. You know, I think Steve did the 2-minute drill, except he only had a little over a minute to do it, and won that game right, you know, in the closing moments. So when you think about parents having 3 children who were very involved in the sports program in America's High, you know, you just can't have a better memory than that.
Absolutely. Steve, let's go to you now. When you think about that time in Sumter County at America's High, just tell me what immediately comes to mind.
It's probably football that jumps to the first of the mind, although I played baseball there as well and enjoyed it. But I'll tell you, Tim, part of what I remember is some legendary wiffle ball games in the backyard at Highway 19 and playing football in the front yard with us and Clint Morgan and others. But, you know, when I think about America's High, we had some great baseball games, but it's really football and Friday night lights that come back. You know, I remember, you know, walking from the gym down to the field and having a cold Friday night and a turtleneck on, and I'm gagging as I'm walking to the field because I'm ready to go. And you know, just the memory of having that with all of my friends, my brother that was there with me, you know, and there were times when I would grab him by the face mask and times when he would grab me. And I'm pretty sure there were a few times that Jay just kind of stepped to the side and let somebody come through to light me up, just to humble me a little bit. But,
he wouldn't do that, would he?
Yeah, I think he did. But I do remember him. I think the guy's name was Bucky, wasn't it, Jay?
Bucky Bedingfield, absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember him in some of those games, but I remember the 200th game for Coach Shell. That was a phenomenal game against Albany High. I think one of the better games that I played in. But, you know, I love sports in Americas, from the backyard, front yard to recreation ball. I remember going to Moultrie every year in all-star baseball and getting the pitch there and hitting some home runs and things like that all the way up through high school. Unlike you, I wasn't able to play basketball. I wasn't quite good enough in basketball, but for baseball and football, you know, it's just some of the best days of my life.
I didn't say this up front, but Dad is in Mississippi. Steve's right outside of Chicago, Illinois, in Lake Forest. Jay, you're over in Ackworth, Georgia. You spent some time in South Carolina and then some time up in Tennessee. But now you've been back in Georgia for a few years, and you've gotten to see firsthand just the quality of high school football that goes on here. In fact, I saw this past weekend, where Georgia has now overtaken Florida, and we're second behind Texas in the quality of high school football in the country. But when you look at high school football now, where you're at, do you ever just sit back and think, man, this is really high level, and I used to play at that level?
Yeah, I tell you what, I've gotten to watch quite a bit of high school football like you said, in Tennessee and in North and South Carolina, and a good bit out in West Texas. What really strikes me, Tim, is in Georgia, the speed and intensity of the game across all classifications. It doesn't matter if it's single A or 6A. the speed and intensity is just off the charts compared to the other places that I've been. And it's not just speed and intensity. It's really game IQ, right? So these kids are well coached. They know the game. They know what to do, and really some odd situations. And you just don't see that universally in the other places that I've been. And when I think about, I was in that. I know I wasn't that good, right? But I was in that system with some really good coaches that really were able to teach me the game. So I knew what was going on. And I could use my intellect where I didn't have necessarily talent. And they really did a good job of really highlighting your strengths and teaching you to work around your weaknesses. And so that's really what I remember most. That's really carried off more than anything else, is just a lot of application for really diving in and being intense as a group. It's pretty neat.
If you're just joining us tonight, we are having a special Thanksgiving edition. This is the Estes family, my dad, my two brothers, minus John and minus my sister, Leanne. So we definitely want to give them a shout out. Want to remind you that our program today is also brought to you by our friends at One Digital Solutions. They're a steward of business growth and personal development. One Digital resolves real problems by fusing together solutions that are customized to handle things like human resource management, financial services, and employee benefits. It's really everything all in one. It's One Digital. Contact Will Peterson at 229-347-6289 and let One Digital begin helping you today. Dad, you still keep up with youth sports and high school sports in our area. You do that each week, either through our phone calls or watching things online or listening to it on the radio. We probably have a lot of dads that are out there in our audience tonight watching this show, knowing that you're speaking to those dads. What advice could you give to them about being involved in your kids' lives, but at the same time, respecting the coach's decision?
Well, just recognize that this is probably the greatest time of your life, so don't miss the opportunity. It's not going to come again. Being part of your child's life is manifest when you show up at the game. When you talk to them about the game, you know something about it. You can comment on how they did so that they know that you were watching and caring for them. It's really a role model opportunity for you, though, because you're going to role model for your child how to act when everything goes well and how to act when there are some things that concern you. If I think about team sports, it's a laboratory for learning respect for authority. That coach has been put in a position or volunteered for a position if it's in the partner system. And you need to listen to that coach and respect them. You may not agree with them all the time, but you learn how to deal with people who are in roles of authority. You don't want to do anything that would embarrass your family name. You don't want to do anything that would embarrass your child. So, think before you act if things don't go right. I know it's good when you can get involved and do things that will support what the team's going on. I think about your mother running the hot dog stand at the baseball games and working so hard to make the little extra money for the team so that the team could do what they wanted to do.
And if I'm not mistaken, Dad, for a couple of years, you and Mom also headed up the Panther Club, right?
We did. And, it was an opportunity to really promote America's high school and promote what the coaches were trying to do. So there needs to be good communication between you and the coach. Look for an opportunity to get involved in something like the Panther Club.
Steve,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Dad. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that being a parent in the America's High system was special during the time that y'all were growing up. Now, I don't know how to put it other than it was just a large family with high standards.
Absolutely.
And do all you can to try to make what you're involved in respectable.
Steve, we'll go to you. You know, you hear all the time from coaches and athletic personnel that they tell these kids, hey, this is a microcosm of what you're going to get when you become an adult. You learn to be a teammate. You now work in a pretty high-level industry. You deal with a large team of people. And like I said, we hear all the time, being a part of a sports team as a teenager would give you some things that transfer into the work area. When you look back now and compare it to what you're doing in business, where do you see those parallels?
You absolutely see it in everyday life. You know, as I think about if I'm going out and recruiting an executive, I love to get an executive, male or female, that happens to have played college sports, for example. One, I think there's a competitive nature that's built within them, a desire to succeed, just a passion for something. But, I think beyond that, it's really around someone that is comfortable being a part of something that's bigger than themselves, aligning around goals, having common passions, common, approaches to things, people that at points are very comfortable being the person on the mound in the ninth inning with 2 outs and saying, give me the ball, right? And somebody that's got that kind of energy about them, but also somebody that says, hey, I know right now I'm working for something that's bigger than myself, and I have a particular role, and I want to do that role right now versus being, the person that's going to be a star. But, I have found folks that have grown up, whether it's in, Parks and Rec, high school, college ball, whatever it may be, you learn those team skills about, being motivated for something, being part of a bigger group, saying, what do I have to do to make the group better than who I am individually, is something that when I'm recruiting, if I can find that class, I'm looking for it, and I want to add that to the team.
Jay, I'd offer you the same question. You manage a good bit of people every week and meet with those folks and try to motivate them to get in the right direction and all pull together as a team. When you think about your time in sports here in Southwest Georgia, how does that relate to what you do today?
Yeah, I think it's a lot like what I was talking about before. Being part of a team in any high intensity athletics, it really prepares you for leading a team in the workforce, because you have to learn how to play to each team member's strength and how to game plan around their weaknesses. You learn to communicate goals and what that goal means for them in their role, right? So it's all the different roles that are in different sports. You learn to celebrate success and to celebrate development. And you learn to teach and to be led through challenges. It's not just the winning, it's how you react to the losing. Does it make you better or not? Do you work together to accomplish a common theme? And can you be happy in the other person's glory? So I really appreciate that piece of it. Being the center with the brother as a quarterback, I think I had as much joy as he did when the touchdown pass was thrown, right? Yeah. My role was just to block a person and keep them from getting back there. And, when we get to do our little high five dance after a touchdown, that was kind of the peak of my existence at that point in time. And so you want to have a team that celebrates success just like that in the workplace.
Hey, Tim,
absolutely. Yeah.
I will tell you, I don't know if you remember or not, but Jay and I had a celebratory kind of touchdown dance, if you want to think about it, on the sideline.
I do. I remember that
we did. And I will say, just, in terms of joy at the moment, but in terms of what I reflect back on, I remember that. I hadn't done it in 30 something years, but I guarantee you, if we were in the driveway at home, I'd be able to hit the thing and go back and forth and do all of that. But, as Jay said, he was the center, I was the quarterback. So a lot of times I got the glory for that, but I couldn't have done it without him. But, as much as anything, running to the sideline and getting to do that celebratory handshake, if you will, with him is just awesome.
Today's program is also brought to you in part by our friends at the Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance Agency. They're located at 925 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Americus. You can reach them at 928-3686, or you can look them up on Facebook. Better yet, drop by and see Marty, Mary Lynn, or any of their fine staff and let them discuss your insurance needs. They can even do the famous discount double check to make sure you're receiving all of the savings that are available to you. Thanks again to Marty McDonald State Farm for sponsoring this segment of the Integrity Sports Podcast. And like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. One of the fun things that we get to experience almost every year at Thanksgiving is all of us sitting around with our wives and our kids watching college football. And we've got multiple college fans in this family. I don't know how that happened. We've got folks that are Mississippi State fans. Our brother-in-law, Jeremy, is an Ole Miss fan, and I'm guessing he's converted our sister to being an Ole Miss fan. Then Steve somehow got into this faded orange thing and became a Tennessee fan. Of course, Betsy, John's wife, is a Georgia fan. And Jay, you and I and John are the only ones that I think have remained true and are the Auburn fans. Tammy, of course, is an Auburn fan. She's behind me right now going, hey, what about me? Yeah, you're an Auburn fan too. But Dad, let's start with you. That's always a lot of fun, really, when all of the folks are sitting around watching their team. But I'm kind of curious about this. It's at your house. How have you juggled all these folks that have different teams?
Well, you have to remember, we've got 4 TVs at the house. and at Thanksmas, we've moved as many of those as we could and did some wild wiring so we could watch 3 games at once. What I've found is that we're a family that yells for the SEC. And we don't, if your team is playing and it's not against my team, I'm going to yell for your team. It's just the way we support each other in the family. We've probably got a common enemy in one team in the SEC, but other than that, we just like for the SEC to win.
Who is that common enemy, Steve?
Alabama.
Jay, who would you say that is?
Alabama.
Absolutely. None of us pull for Alabama. Steve,
unless they're playing some national team and they're representing the SEC, and then we'll eat a little crow and let them win.
It's still hard.
Yeah. It is hard, man. It's hard. Steve, somehow you got converted to that faded orange color at Tennessee. Tell us your feelings on college football and what causes you to pull for the Volunteers.
Well, it was a condition of marriage, Tim. And so, 1, she was worth it. 2, that was back in the Peyton Manning days. So it was a little bit easier to convert. But I felt like the Israelites walking in the wilderness there for about 15 years. And I told her, I said, I'm done. I'm going back to Auburn. And she said,
Yep.
That's fine, but you can never come back. So I ended up sticking with Tennessee. And, we're having a pretty good year. I had to have a lot of help this past weekend. Thank you to Auburn for beating A&M. I'm sorry, Jeremy, for what happened with Ole Miss. But we needed that to happen. And, man, wasn't it beautiful to see Alabama go down? But
always,
I think Tennessee will be in. I just hope we don't play Georgia in the first round of the playoffs. Anybody else, give me Notre Dame, whoever it may be. I don't want to play Georgia again in the first round.
And Dad, you've got to explain this. We didn't give you a chance to do this. You got your Mississippi State on today. Tell us who you pull for. I know you always pull for Mississippi State when they play Ole Miss, but you still got that love for Auburn, I think.
Well, I do like Auburn. Jay went to Mississippi State. You didn't mention that, but he still yells for Auburn. This year, I was planning on actually pulling for Ole Miss because State has had a terrible year, and it would just be unfortunate if State happened to beat Ole Miss and kept them out of a good bowl or maybe at a long shot at the playoff. So, I want that Mississippi school to do the best they can.
All right, Jay, that's what I was going to mention on you. You graduated from Mississippi State, but yet you still got the real burnt orange on.
Absolutely. Got my Auburn shirt rocking on tonight. I went to Mississippi State. I love Mississippi State, and I root for Mississippi State every time they play anybody but Auburn, right? So
yeah,
Auburn is number one in my heart. And, I guess with it being closest to Americus when I was growing up, you go into that stadium and the feel and you say, this is it, right? So that's kind of my story, and I stuck with it, right? But, I think, coming up on this week, a rare opportunity where I think Alabama has not been able to find their identity, right? So, and they're reeling from having 2 losses in the season. When does that happen? So I think if Auburn can score quickly, I think they can shock the Crimson Tide and deliver them something they haven't seen in a long, long time. And that's my goal. And I know it's a lofty goal. It's shooting high, but it's possible, right? So,
hey, Jay, Alabama might still make the playoffs even with 4 losses. I'm just saying.
Clearly, right?
Because they're Alabama.
And speaking as a Mississippi
Nick Saban has a vote.
Right.
Speaking as a Mississippi State fan, I'm looking forward to basketball season.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're loving basketball season right now. Yeah, Auburn just won the Maui Invitational yesterday, so that's a big thing, and I expect them to be ranked number 1 in the country in the next AP poll. Hey, today's program is also brought to you by our friends at the Fish House Restaurant, located at 224 North Jackson Street in Americus. They offer some of the freshest seafood in all of Southwest Georgia, whether it's fresh shrimp, oysters, or catfish in their seafood center, or a hot meal and a cold drink in the Fish House next door. Owner Mark Tyler and his staff would love to serve you today. Give them a call at 924-5177. You can place a to-go order at that number as well, or you can sit down and enjoy a nice meal tonight. The Fish House Restaurant, a proud sponsor of the Integrity Sports Podcast. We got about 7 or 8 minutes before we wrap this thing up, and what I want to do to end this tonight is let's just talk quickly. Let's briefly go through, and each of us give our thoughts on these games. We'll start with Betsy's team. Georgia plays Georgia Tech, and this is going to be a little more of a competitive game than usual. Dad, what do you think?
I don't see Georgia losing that one at this point in time. I mean, Georgia Tech has looked good. The thing about Georgia Tech is they tend to play better in the bigger moments, so I'll give them credit for that. I think it's going to be a pretty tight game, but as long as Carson Beck cannot throw up all over himself, I think Georgia pulls this one out.
Dad, what do you think?
Well, I saw how Georgia did against Texas. I think Georgia, if they bring their A game, they're going to win, and I'm counting on them bringing their A game.
Jay?
Yeah, I think Georgia Tech has proven their capability as the spoiler, but I can't see Georgia not being ready for it. So I think Georgia strikes quickly and they hold off the Yellow Jackets.
I'm with you. I think all of us are in agreement. Georgia wins this one. Brent Key's done an amazing job at Georgia Tech, and they are bowl eligible, which I think was their goal for the year. Georgia's got a little more to play for. They need to stay in the college football playoff, and a win gets them. They're in the SEC championship, so they need to win out to stay in that good position to be in the playoffs. So we're all going to agree Georgia beats Georgia Tech. All right, the Egg Bowl. This happens on Friday, I think. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, this happens tomorrow. So Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Ole Miss had just a phenomenal season leading up to this past week. Does that give Mississippi State an in, and can they pull this off, Dad?
Well, I think Mississippi State will do well in the first half. probably the first quarter. But as the game goes on, I'm a believer that Ole Miss will come out on top at the final.
All right. Jay, what about you?
I think Ole Miss is too much for Mississippi State. I think Ole Miss is going to come out hard. They're going to strike hard. And Lane Kiffin's going to want to put an exclamation point on things. Doesn't like to lose, and he's got to make up for last week. So I think they blow past Mississippi State.
Steve?
I think it's going to be 812-3. Ole Miss.
I'm thinking the same thing. I wouldn't want to be that team on the other side of Lane Kiffin coming off of a loss like that.
Exactly.
So Ole Miss wins that one. Now we've got Tennessee and Vanderbilt. And again, this is another one of those games that 9 out of every 10, maybe 90 out of every 91 games, you say Tennessee's a shoe-in. But, boy, Vandy's played well, Steve.
Listen, Vandy's got a good team this year. I mean, it's – in any circumstance, I don't think anybody would want to play Vanderbilt. But, you know, we had our bad loss this year to Arkansas. Shouldn't have lost that game. And we're on the cusp of making it to the playoffs for the first year that it's in. So I think Tennessee pulls it out, but I think it's going to be a tight game. I mean, I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter, and I just hope that we're able to muscle through it. But I'm going with Tennessee, but it's going to be tight, I think.
Dad?
Well, I sort of agree with Steve. I've been impressed with Vanderbilt this year. They have really surprised some teams. I do not think they're going to surprise Tennessee. I think Tennessee's ready, and Tennessee's going to beat them, and Tennessee's going to go for the playoffs.
Jay?
Yeah, I think I'll dovetail on that. I think Tennessee gets the advantage of not facing Vandy early in the year. So they're not going to be surprised by Vandy, and I think they've had enough time to watch Diego Pavio. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he is a tough character.
He's a winner.
They've got a lot of games to watch to be ready for him. So I think they pull it out over Vandy by more than a touchdown.
I think you're right. So we're all three in agreement. Tennessee wins it. It may be closer than normal, but Tennessee does win it, and they stay eligible. They may be in the best position of any team in America right now because they're not going to the SEC championship. So if they win this game, they are in the college football playoff. So let's hope Tennessee can pull that off. And then we've got the Auburn-Alabama game, the Iron Bowl, the greatest college rivalry in sports. I'm going to start this one because I think I've got a different answer than you're expecting. I think Auburn, you're seeing proof of concept over the last couple of weeks. Auburn is getting better. Right now, if we get the two flips that have been reported this week, we'll have the number one recruiting class in the country for next year. I think they give Hugh Freeze one more year to prove this, and I think he does. But it's at Tuscaloosa. It's not at Jordan-Hare. As Nick Saban said last week, if it's at Tuscaloosa, I'm probably going to pick Auburn because it's haunted there. It is. Jordan-Hare is a special place. But it's at Tuscaloosa. Alabama is still Alabama, even though I think the rivalry will keep it close, but I think Alabama wins it in the end. Dad, what about you?
As much as I hate to say it, I see Alabama coming out on top. And I'm like you. If they were playing that at Auburn, Auburn would have a real chance.
Yeah. Jay, you're the Auburn fan. What do you think?
I'm hanging my hat on the fact that it just means more for Auburn. They need something because it's been a dumpster fire of a season. And I think that Alabama, as its identity, doesn't know how to deal with losing. So can they bounce back or not? I'm hoping that it's not, and Auburn finds a way to sneak out a victory at the end.
Hey, I kind of like that. Steve, what did you think?
You know, I'm kind of with Jay. What do you do if you're at Alabama and you've lost 3 games in a season?
If you're Kalen DeBoer, you stay in the basement somewhere.
You know,
Right.
They've lost 3. Why not lose 4? War Eagle fly down the field.
I hear you. So we got 2 saying Alabama.
And if Auburn wins, they become bowl eligible, don't they?
They do. That would put us at 6-6. So it's going to be a fun weekend. I am certainly going to miss being with you guys, but this has been a lot of fun tonight. I'm sure we'll do some FaceTiming over the weekend. Let's all hope that I get a new healthy granddaughter while we're at during these Thanksgiving holidays, and maybe we can all get back together soon. And when we do, one of the things I want to see is that old handshake, and I want to see if both of you still know how to do it.
Oh, we got it.
Well, thank you, Tim. This is a great birthday present. I appreciate you.
That's right. I was going to end with that, and you stole my thunder. So my mom and dad have the same birthday. And today is that birthday, so we wish both of them a happy birthday. And we want to thank you again for making the Integrity Sports Podcast a part of your weekly routine. We have had over 3,000 views each week for now 14 straight weeks. So we want to thank you for being a part of that. I know we've got a bigger audience this week because of our three guests, and they'll have friends and folks in their extended family. Here's what I want you guys to do. If you're a friend of my dad's or Steve or Jay, and you're not used to watching this, go to YouTube, type in Integrity Sports Podcast, and just hit the subscribe button. I promise you, we do not send out notifications. So all we're trying to do is get to 1,000 subscribers, and that will help us make this show even better. Let me thank our sponsors once again. That's Harper's Tree and Stump Removal, One Digital Solutions, Marty McDonald State Farm Insurance, and the Fish House Restaurant. No matter what platform you're watching this on today, please like and share the video. That's how we keep up with how many views that we're having. So do that for us. But for my dad, Jim, for Steve, my brother, and for Jay, and hey, we're missing Leanne, we're missing John, and my mother's somewhere in the background there, I will bet you. Y'all all have a great Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you guys for joining me. Come back and visit with us next Thursday on the Integrity